I'm Carol Blymeyer, and I'm in the business of influence. I coach organizations and individuals to tell their story as part of creating change that improves the quality of life for families and individuals all across America. Your experience with colorectal cancer can help save lives, and we want to hear from you. It's your turn. Tell us about your journey from diagnosis to where you are today. So, you might be asking, how do you look at your whole life and pull out the most important and most relevant pieces of your story? Well, think about who you're telling the story to. For example, you're going to be telling your story to a member of Congress or their staff. So you're going to want to share the part of your life that shows that struggle that you hope no one else has to go through. And you're going to want that element of your story to be in alignment with those policy asks that Fight CRC has asked you to talk about. You'll have a very short amount of time when you meet with a member of Congress or their staff. So now is not the time to share your entire life timeline or recite your entire medical chart. Talk about the impact that the disease has had on you. Talk about the feelings. Create an emotional connection with your listener. You want to use this time to be memorable and make an impression. You know, you might be the first person that they've ever met with colorectal cancer, and you're giving a very scary disease a very real face, personality, and story. And that's really powerful. Your story matters, so let's tell it together. When you think about telling your story to policymakers, you want to have impact. It's a short amount of time that you have with them in your meetings. Remember, you are their constituent. They're in Congress to serve you. You need to tell your story in a short, compelling way. And here's why. They're in service to you. They need to know that the decisions they make have a very real impact on very real people. So keep it short, keep it to the point, and make sure that you're telling your story using the framework that Fight CRC has given you so that they understand why there needs to be an increase in research funding. Your presence in that meeting shows them, I've had this disease, I've had treatment for this disease, and I'm still here and I'm not going anywhere. But we want to think about preventing this for the future. I don't want my kids or my grandkids to be diagnosed with colorectal cancer. So you need to tell your members of Congress and their staff that their decisions matter. They matter because they impact people just like you. There are a lot of government agencies and organizations and departments that do research, and they do research to help understand how and why colorectal cancer exists. This year's policy asks involve research funding at the National Cancer Institute as well as the Department of Defense. And we're focused on making sure that the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has colorectal cancer near the top of their agenda. You might be wondering, the Department of Defense? Why colorectal cancer there? Early onset colorectal cancer. A number of active duty soldiers and warfighters, it happens to them. So you want to make sure that you tell your story that shows early onset colorectal cancer affects the very people who are protecting our nation and who are devoting their lives to service. So we need to take good care of them. Anytime you're asking for an increase in research funding or CDC funding to make sure that colorectal cancer prevention stays on their agenda, it's all about people. It's all about people like you, like me, like anyone who has been diagnosed with colorectal cancer. Their decisions impact their constituents, and we want to make sure that members of Congress and their staff understand all of the different agencies and departments throughout the federal government that do the research that Congress needs to fund. Congressional staffers do a lot of meetings, hundreds every week, and they hear a lot of really sad, really shocking stories. The average age of a congressional staffer, 25, 26, 27 years old. You need to tell them about early age onset colorectal cancer. It's increasing at an alarming rate, and it's happening to people their age. That's going to help you get their attention. It's going to help you be memorable. They're going to pay attention to those stories because you've just made it personal and relatable to them. So make sure that you talk about early age onset when you talk about the need for increased research funding at the Department of Defense and the National Cancer Institute. Do you need help trying to figure out how to tell that short, compelling story? Here's a simple rule you can follow. It's called the 3-10-30 rule of storytelling. You want to make no more than 3 points. You've got to do it in just 10 seconds, and you use no more than 30 words. You might think, that's impossible. I can't do it. You can. Let me give you an example. I have colorectal cancer. Please fund NIH medical research to find a cure for me and prevention measures so my kids can be cancer-free when they grow up. That was 3 points. The story was 10 seconds long, and I think that clocked in at 29 words. And right here on this page, you'll find downloadable worksheets and other tools that can help you figure out your 3-10-30 story, as well as learn other important rules and tips for telling your story on Capitol Hill.
Hello, I'm Erin Darbuz, and I'm so excited to be discussing CRC advocacy with you all today. Colorectal cancer is a very important issue for me personally because I lost both of my parents to the disease only a few years apart in my early 20s. So thank you all for advocating on the issue on Capitol Hill. I am going to give you some tips and tricks as someone who has been both a Hill staffer and as a lobbyist on the other side in those Hill meetings. I did work for 6 years in the US House of Representatives for 3 different members. I often sat in on meetings with members of Congress and took meetings of my own. And after Capitol Hill, I did work at a public policy firm doing government affairs and advocacy work, where I did go to the Hill and advocated and lobbied for various clients. So I'm excited to share with you some of that knowledge. For staffers in these meetings, you need to remember that a lot of them have very full schedules every single day. They're meeting with various advocates for all different issues, and everyone they're meeting with is passionate about their own issue. So in order for you to stand out and to make a good impression, you want to make sure that you come prepared and that you understand what you're asking of each member of Congress. Decide ahead of time who in your group is going to speak and when, so it doesn't seem disorganized. And make sure that if you are a constituent of the member, you make that as clear as possible, as soon as possible. Early on in the meeting, you want to let them know that you are a constituent. And as a staffer in these meetings, a lot of times the member is scheduled to be there with you as that staffer, but votes come up, things change at the last minute, and oftentimes you'll be meeting with the staffer without that member. Don't be alarmed or too disappointed. The staffer is the subject matter expert. So unless colorectal cancer is a passion project for that specific member, they're likely not going to have any knowledge or maybe even an opinion about it, but that staffer will. So really take the time to engage with the staffer and don't see it as too much of a disappointment if the member isn't there. So there are several do's for advocates during these Hill meetings. And I would say the first thing is always start your meeting off on a positive note. Find something to thank the member for, whether it's something that they've done in your district, maybe they attended an event that you hosted, maybe it's joining the colorectal cancer caucus ahead of your meeting, and maybe it's just thanking them for taking the time to meet with you, but always start every meeting off on that positive footing. The next do would be when discussing colorectal cancer, don't assume that the member of Congress knows anything about the issue. When discussing the issue, make sure to be concise. Members likely only have around 10 to 15 minutes to spend with you. So be brief and as specific as possible during these meetings. And last, ask specific questions to the official and allow them to answer those questions. A lot of times they will allow you to talk, and that creates a situation where they don't actually have to commit to anything because you spoke the entire time. So ask questions. Where are they on this issue? If this came up, how would they vote? Try to get specific commitments. And if they don't want to commit in the moment in the meeting, ask them when you can follow up, when they might have a definite answer for you. So my number one don't in a congressional meeting would be, do not guess. If you don't know the answer to a question, do not guess, because you want to make sure that you are a credible source for your member of Congress. You are building a relationship with this office, and just say, I don't know. And this actually provides an opportunity for you to keep communication open with the member and with their staff. So if you don't know the answer, say, I don't know, but I would be happy to find that information out. With whom should I follow up with on your staff? And that keeps you as a credible source, and it allows you to follow up with the office. Another don't would be, don't speak the entire time, right? We said earlier, if they'll let you speak the entire time, and that keeps them from committing to anything. So you want to allow a dialogue between you and the member. Do not leave without some clarity on next steps. Try to get those specific commitments in the meeting if you can. And lastly, don't bring politics into the meeting at all. Stay away from it. So after you meet with a member of Congress or their staffer, you always want to make sure to continue that relationship. Advocacy is not a one-time event. So if your member was in the meeting, make sure at least one person in your group writes a personal thank you letter to that member of Congress, and use that opportunity to also reiterate things that may have been agreed upon in the meeting. Perhaps they made a commitment, remind them of that commitment. If you meet with the member or the staffer, either way, definitely email the staffer. That's an appropriate avenue to thank the staffer and to follow up with them. So send them an email, thank you for that meeting. They'll have your information now, and you can easily send them information that you promised them. They can get back to you. And of course, as things develop in colorectal cancer, you can send them relevant data moving forward in the future, just to keep them thinking about the issue.
Now you're ready. Whether you're meeting with your member of Congress and their staff virtually, whether you're making a phone call, sending an email, sharing your story and reaching out to them via social media, all of it is important. Any way that you reach out to your member of Congress and their staff matters. They need to hear from you.
Be sure to check out our advocacy portal at fightcrc.org/advocacy,